Hey, what's up? I'm Nick Hippa from the band MIRE. I'd like to share some ideas and concepts on how to write pretty sick guitar solos, and to do so, I'm going to be taking a look at the second solo from the MIRE song Lightless. This is leading by example. Alright, so first things first, the song is actually played on a 7-string, tuned to drop A, but since this is a solo section, I'm using my 6-string Comparison Angelus NH, just my favorite guitar, so always trying to put it in a video. But this is just in standard tuning, so to follow along, all you need is a regular 6-string guitar in E, A, D, G, B, E. Alright, so when you're approaching a guitar solo, the first obvious question you need to answer is what to play. Like, what notes are you going to play? And then, where are you going to play them? So to answer the first part of that question, one approach I like to take is just deconstructing whatever riff I'm playing over, finding those notes, and then taking those notes and laying them out across the fretboard. So using the Lightless solo section, for example, these are the notes in the riff that I'm playing over. Alright, so once you know the notes you want to play based on the riff you'll be soloing over, if they're not already in one position, meaning you can access them with just your 4 fingers, not having to move your arm, let's get them there. And let's get them there using octaves. And octaves is a really simple but powerful concept for moving patterns and shapes all over the fretboard and getting different sounds and emotions out of something that's sort of repetitive in nature. The concept of octaves is pretty simple. It's, the Western scale has 12 notes, and once you go through those 12 notes, they repeat again, either higher or lower. So on one string, that would be 12 frets. So if this is E, then 12 frets up would be another E, and 12 frets up from that would be another E. So that's how you find it across one string, and if you have a good knowledge of your fretboard, which I encourage everyone to have, you'll be able to look at it or just even know where everything is because of your familiarity with identifying, like, oh, this is an E, this is an E, this is an E, this is an E. So the basic idea is that the note repeats itself every 12 frets. And the challenge is that you have a lot of strings here. And so how do you find the octave across all strings? The first way I do it is to just think of tuning. When you first learn how to play a guitar, you tune probably like this. The guitar is tuned in fourths, and that's the way we're taught to find the octave of the note, is if this is an A, then you go a string down, 5 frets back. In that case, it'll be an open. On the 3rd string, it's 1 string down, 4 frets back to find its octave. The same tuning concept applies anywhere on the fretboard. So if this is an A, if I take the tuning concept, 1 string down, 5 frets back, I found the corresponding A, and it also works going the other way, with the exception of the 3rd string, which is only 4 frets. So that's the tuning method to find octaves, and then another way you can find octaves is just by skipping a string and going up 2 frets. And that's the most common octaves I think we see in music, because it's used in a lot of riffs. It just sounds great. It sounds thicker and it's more interesting to do. And you got to remember, because the B string is tuned to a 3rd, you just got to go up another fret when it's the 4th string. So if you take the idea of a tuning octave and a riff octave, and these aren't technical terms by any means, these are just what I'm calling them to hopefully communicate to you, you can find A in a number of places. So taking the notes that we figured out from the riff we're playing over, but starting at the A because the song is in drop A, I mean, the easiest way to get there would be to know your theory and what mode you're playing in. This is in Phrygian dominant, which is just a flatted second, sixth, and seventh. But we figured this out the hard way, or the easy way, however you want to look at it. So if this is our pattern, and we know that this is an octave, then we repeat all of the things that we know about octaves to find those notes down the fretboard. So we found the notes that we want to play. We laid them across the fretboard. And now this is where creativity comes in. You know, it's like, so what do you do with it? And the first thing that I like to do when I write a solo is think of the context of the song. What's going on in the song? What's the vibe? What does the song need in this section, which is essentially between choruses? For Lightless, my solo is the second of 2 solos. So there's a couple of things that I was thinking about when writing this. One, the song is pretty fast and riff heavy the entire time. Like even the choruses are pretty gnarly. So with that in mind, I was like, okay, this is gonna be a chiller, more low-key solo, and it's gonna be emphasized on melody. This is a 2 solo section. I'm playing the second one. What is Ryan doing? Ryan is ending on a note that hangs over my solo section. So right there, I was like, man, I don't want to clash with him. So I'm going to take maybe a pause or two. I'm going to, instead of coming in on the 1, I'm going to come in on the 3. And if Ryan's ending high, let me start over lower and build my way back up there. So it's like we do 2 cycles of things, you know? So with context in mind, I already knew that I'm going to start down here slowly, melodically, and build into something here. And because I'm not going to be trying to go crazy or anything like that, maybe I can throw in a hook or repeat something that is like maybe a little bit catchier and then end around here as well. So context gives me a great idea for just how it's going to flow. And with the idea of how I wanted it to flow physically, I approached the melody accordingly. So the way I approach melody writing is I either loop a section and just jam to it and do everything that, you know, take all these steps and do it at once while I'm playing, or I just sit there and I listen to the part and I sing what I think would sound cool. Singing your ideas to yourself, it's a good way to remove the physicality of the guitar playing and just thinking of something that sounds cool in your head. And I love doing that because that is always going to be what feels the most natural, is like, what's the melody that comes to your head here? So the first melody that came to my head was, and that's literally just me moving through the positions of the notes, like creeping my way down here because I knew that's how I wanted it to flow. So. And for the main part of the solo, I wanted it to be sort of catchy melodic thing. And so I used the same idea and just singing to myself or playing to myself and came up with this. So that's how I came up with the melody in this song. And that, again, that was just me thinking, or that's me knowing the notes and knowing where I wanted it to go and just kind of finding a pattern and a groove that I thought fit with what I was hearing. If you've ever heard the saying that like a guitar solo is a song within a song or a story within a story, I would describe every step that we've done like this. Figuring out what notes you're going to play are the words that you can use. Finding your melodic phrasing is the story itself. It's the words combined. But what makes it really special is how you say it. So how you say it is the delivery. It's the techniques that you use. It's the feel that you put into it. And so that's where I feel like a guitar player can really shine and establish their own unique sonic identity. So for this melodic section that we just went over, instead of playing it as plainly as I use techniques that I lean on or that do what I want them to do to say it how I want to say it. You know, so I'm just going to show you each section the way that I played it, so you can kind of see that the melodies are enveloped in technique that make them to me, like cool to listen to. So if the first melody is, I'm going, and there's a couple different techniques in there. The first is a bend, and I love bending between the notes that I want to hit because it sounds more like a vocalist. It sounds, you know, like a slide, and you can add a lot of swag to your slide instead of it being like a robotic, you know, sequenced note that you would see on a grid. In conjunction with the bend, I'm also hitting a squealy or pinch harmonic, artificial harmonic, whatever you want to call it. And that's just something that you got to practice and do, but it's hitting your thumb at the same time that your pick hits the string, but you don't want to do it too hard. You want to find the sweet spot, hence the practice. And you also want to find where in proximity of this little bridge area you do it, because it always has a different sound. And what I mean by that is, you know, if you... So there's a big difference in and. But those are the two techniques together, a pinch harmonic and a bend to start it. And I'm hitting it around here. In the middle, but a little bit leaning towards the bridge pickup is where I usually hit my squeals. And from there, I'm using the concept of a natural harmonic. On the same string, if you tap with your right hand 12 frets higher than the note you're fretting, you're gonna get a harmonic. So that's the same note. So I'm going, hitting another squeal. And that already to me is way cooler than, again, that's how you say it, and that's how I wanted to say it. It's a little obnoxious now that I think about it, a little squeal heavy, but that's just what I was feeling at the time. And I do the same thing with the run. Instead of hitting this note twice, I do a full step bend on the 5th fret to, essentially I'm playing the same note, but I'm saying it differently. To me, sick bends are just like, they're more waily and rippy. And so yeah, so I'm going. You know, I don't even know what technique that is. It's just something that I thought sounded kind of like weird and woozy. You know, I could have probably done like a bend, like to have that little disorienting feel. Also, side note, I do an octave there in recording, just to add a little bit of flavor to that part. And that's something that I encourage a lot of you guitar players to do, is just stack cool moments in your solo with either harmonies or octaves, just because you can. You have, with modern recording, your DAWs have infinite tracks. Well, not infinite, but a lot. So that, to me, adding an octave layer there made that part a lot cooler than what it really should have been. So the next part is what I consider like the melody or the main theme of the solo, and that's... So that's pretty straightforward. I'm using the rate of the bend to kind of add the steez to the part. And I'm doing one thing that's different than what we've explained previously, and that's a pre-bend. Instead of going, I'm going. You know, a pre-bend is probably like a bluesy move, but it's just a cooler way to go. You know, especially if you delay it, it just makes it sound a little bit more singy. And that's what I'm always going for, is like, how would a sick vocalist like wail on this part? You know, how would my favorite guitar players really get that scream out of their playing? And so with this section, I took that idea and I just performed it using the concepts that we talked about of bending. And I'm also using some slides. And towards the end, I'm doing like a little like dirty kind of slide. Instead of going, I'm doing like a, kind of like picking it to give it a little bit more like juice on the way back down. And if there's like a little bit of a pinch in there, it just makes it a little bit screamier. So for the final run in Lightless, all I did was just stick to the notes and stick to the course of action, which is marinated down here. And I want to end with a bend, but ending with a bend, isn't as interesting if there's no like build up to it. So I just come back down and go back up, just like a standard run. I use all the notes that we initially said we were going to use, but one thing that I was cognizant of in starting was the economy of where my fingers were. So here's how that run sounds. Another thing I'd like to encourage you to try is just using the same notes in your run, and I mean like back to back. Like this one starts off with. It just sounds a little less like sequenced MIDI when you're able to use, or even in this thing. I'm playing the same note, like I'm playing an octave here, but I'm hanging out on the same note because I wanted to give it a certain like groundedness, you know, for the melody to kind of center around. So don't be afraid to use the same note. And if you look at like my right hand here, I kind of mapped this out so that I could easily move between strings and my left hand was doing all the work. The last technique that I use is a full step bend, but I have my pinky finger planted on what is essentially the fourth of the note that I'm landing on, so it would be this. But I thought that sounded cooler to bend into it. It just is more screamy. And that's, you know, that was me just knowing that I wanted to end on the main note, but wanting it to be a little bit chunkier, but then cooler than that. So that's one way to write a guitar solo. You know, there's no correct one way. It's whatever works best for you. You don't have to be so methodical in the way that you approach a guitar solo. If you do it enough, all of those things sort of happen at once. You know, especially as you get a better grasp of theory and you have all your techniques down, you can just listen to a section and just start gripping and ripping pretty quick and get something that you like. This is just my attempt at breaking it down in a way that you can look at and assess if you have thought of or not. So I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to play this solo note for note or even this whole song, we have tabs at the link in the description below. We also have merch on our Bandcamp and our website, and we have a Sweetwater link with, you know, links to our favorite gear, like this sick Comparison Angelus NH. And yeah, just links to where all of our stuff is at. And if you liked this sort of stuff and you want to learn more from the record, let us know in the comments. Like if there's a specific riff or technique that have heard us do. Like I love doing this because I feel like it's a cool way to share, you know, the music that we care about. So please give us a like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.